Good morning. Hello, and welcome to episode one of Good Morning College Football. I'm Nicholas Ian Allen, and we're trying something new. This is our first episode of a daily, mostly daily college football podcast morning show from campus to Canton. And this is something that I've really wanted to do for a while. Those of you who joined us last August, we did C2-A-Days, a twice daily show on YouTube from campus to Canton, where we were getting together a lot of news and updates from fall camp. And, spring practices, of course, are kicking off across the country very soon. Some have actually already gotten started, but had a similar idea of wanting to, gather news and updates, things like that in the spring period as well. But then I've also always wanted to be involved with a daily morning college football show. So want to, give ourselves a try. And, of course, this time of year, those of you who listen to a lot of college football podcasts, it seems like there's some folks out there that, will say, it's such a long off season and there's not enough to talk about, not enough, to do a show every day or in some cases every week. But we, of course, know that's wrong. And we've certainly, I think, can fill an hour per morning, most mornings. And we're going to absolutely give it a try today. So I'm a little rusty on the daily aspect of things and certainly running something on my own each day, but we'll knock that rust off pretty quickly, I expect. And there, of course, is a ton of news and information to get to. Today is National Signing Day, and it's not what it once was when this was the official or unofficial start to the college football off season because of the December signing period. A lot of the most impactful players, biggest names, have already made their college destinations official. And then now, of course, with the movement that we've seen with head coaches and of course, the transfer portal opening up, some of those top players have already moved once already, even after signing with their teams in December. So there's a lot of updates still to come. A lot of the, 3-star and lower rated players still are available. There certainly are some programs who will be adding a few pieces to their classes today. There are also often some transfer updates that happen on this day in February, as a lot of the high school players have made their destinations known. Maybe some of those guys end up at junior colleges where perhaps there weren't some things maybe that wasn't the expectation if they signed in December, opened up some opportunities for some transfers. And then, of course, that is also just a very busy thing going on as well. So today is a day where we will see a few transfer additions that we were not aware of previously. And of course, we'll be tracking those types of things specifically, I will, in our CFB Winning Edge returning production database, which is live and available to our C2C Winning Edge members, our all 22 members at campustocanton.com. And on that note, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the Campus to Canton YouTube channel. Please give this video a like, help us to grow as a network, and also help us to get this new project started off on the right foot. It is something that I think will be beneficial to all of our members, to those of you who are just looking for as much college football news and information as you can get on a daily or almost daily basis. So do please give us a like. And also, if you haven't already, consider becoming a member at Campus to Canton. Plans start as low as $2.99 per month. That includes Discord access, access to a wide range of written content, of course, rankings and tools, things of that nature. And then all the way up to our all 22 and C2C Winning Edge members, you get even more premium content like that returning production database that we discussed. That is the first big off-season project for me personally. And this year, we were able to get it out into the world far earlier than we ever had before. And a big reason for that was joining Campus to Canton and the crew there has just been unbelievable. The work that has gone in behind the scenes to help get that ready to present is just something that is a complete game changer for me personally, also for the work that we've done the last few years at CFB Winning Edge, and of course anybody who's already had access to that. That our work isn't perfect. I mean, there's over 20,000 players in that database. In this era of college football, there are so many still, even though a lot of them have filtered out, there are a lot of players who were dealing with extra years of eligibility, medical red shirts. It's difficult to track, who's coming back, who's not. And there are other returning production databases out there. A lot of people do a lot of great work in that space, tracking those things. But to my knowledge, we're the only one that makes it publicly available where you can see, player by player, who's coming back, who's not. And if you notice a mistake, let us know. We want to make it as accurate as possible. And in the early days of those numbers, we have had to make some updates. So we really, really appreciate the feedback on that. We really appreciate anybody who is, of course, a member, has access to those things. Let us know what we can do to improve. And we want to make that database in particular, but also all the work we do as accurate as possible. And it's a collaborative effort, not just me, but not also only the team at C2C, which has been excellent, the CFF team, of course, the folks in leadership. It's been an amazing experience for me personally, but also our members are a big part of helping us to make our work as good as it can possibly be. And I personally really appreciate that. So we're 10 minutes in now to the intro, and this is going to be a 1 hour show. So I'm going to have to pick up the pace a little bit moving forward, and some news, the first 15 minutes usually of each show, roughly, and it will change, it will evolve, but the plan as it stands right now is to talk news in that first 15 minutes or so each episode. And as I mentioned before, spring practice has started at Hawaii. They kicked off spring practice over a week ago, the first FBS team to do so. And I know there are a couple of FCS teams who've also kicked off. I believe Chattanooga, Charleston Southern, I think, is the first spring game that I've seen listed. So I believe that they've kicked off as well. But we are going to be seeing more and more programs get started. It seems like maybe there are fewer who are planning to open in February, as we've seen in years past. I remember, when Herm Edwards was at Arizona State, they were among the very first, and right around this time in the calendar, second week of February, they were getting going. So perhaps it's a change in the transfer portal. You kind of want to know where you stand when that spring window opens. But a long time thought going into maybe the argument that starting earlier is better than later is, if you get an injury, there's more time to recover, get that player, back and ready to go. Also, it helps you to flip the calendar, start talking, 2024 as quickly as possible, or the upcoming season as quickly as possible. Get a full, assessment of your roster, see who, has made some progress already in the early off-season months. And then, if you do wrap up spring practice by time that spring transfer window opens, then you have an opportunity perhaps to bring in some guys and hit the ground running, lose those practice reps, but get those players acclimated with a longer period of time, perhaps leading up into the season and into summer workouts to get those guys ready to go by fall. But of course, everybody, even if they haven't kicked off the spring on-field practice yet, off-season workouts are in full swing across the country, strength and conditioning programs. And we are hearing, some reports out of those workouts. One in particular that caught my eye is Will Howard and Cleveland.com. Stephen Means of Cleveland.com recently had some time to speak with Howard, who, of course, is transferred from Kansas State. to Ohio State is, I think, firmly the projected starter there for the Buckeyes. Will be a competition, and Ryan Day and some follow up conversations, and I've already seen some reports coming out of Columbus as we talk here Wednesday morning. Of course, we'll have a lot more interviews because it is National Signing Day. But Will Howard's not going to be given the job. He of course, will have to compete with Devin Brown, other very, very talented players coming in this year. But Will Howard, I think, is pretty clearly, and most would agree, the player to beat here, and is going to be stepping into a situation that is incredibly high expectations. I expect Ohio State, based on those returning production numbers. If you saw the interview that Felix Sharp and I did when we release those numbers, you know that Ohio State ranks pretty high, at least, you know, compared to recent years, among the top 30 or so nationally. And for a team that is as talented as they are from top to bottom, that's a lot of production that's returning. That's a scenario where you can expect that, you know, they were able to get a lot of veteran players back, especially on defense. They were already, you know, right there toward the very, very top in our CFB Winning Edge roster strength numbers. That is, you know, we take raw recruiting ratings and adjust them for experience and career production to date. And Ohio State rates, recruits as well as anybody in the country as far as high school talent. But then they've also added guys like Will Howard who have played and won at a high level at a place like K-State. But back to the quotes, Will Howard was asked about the wide receiver group at Ohio State, which has been, you know, a position group that is among the very best in college football the last few years. I mean, 5-star after 5-star. And this year, there's an opportunity for some young players to really make an impact, guys who we haven't really seen operate at a high level, so far in college football. But quoting here from the piece by Stephen Means, talking to Will Howard, he said, quote, "I love my guys at K-State and I have nothing bad to say about them, but the talent here is unbelievable. The thing that's impressed me most about, especially the receiver room, is how driven they are, how much they want to work. I don't have to beg these guys to go catch. They're already out here catching on the jugs when I come out to throw." Will Howard was specifically asked about Jeremiah Smith, the just elite wide receiver recruit coming in. There was a little bit of drama in the first national signing period, whether Smith would end up in Columbus. There was a thought that perhaps he might end up staying closer to home and signing with the Miami Hurricanes, but made his way, of course, to Ohio State and could step into a major contributor role immediately. Not sure if he's going to be able to go out and be a day one starter, but most seem to think that he's got the talent to do so. Folks who pay a lot more closer attention to recruiting than I do really believe that Jeremiah Smith is one of the best wide receiver prospects we've seen in a long time, and to be able to go and play at Ohio State very, very quickly seems very possible for him. So Howard continued, dude, he's a dude, man, talking about Jeremiah Smith. Quote, "I haven't gotten to talk to him that much yet because we've been different groups lifting and stuff, but man, he's a specimen. That dude is a freak show when it comes to physical. I mean, he is. I'm excited to see him out on the field in live action. It'll be fun." So Jeremiah Smith, impressing his likely new quarterback, Will Howard, who also had some very good things to say about guys like Emeka Egbuka, of course, is coming back, expected to be that top target, or Carnell Tate, who I know there are some folks who really think that he maybe might emerge as the go-to receiver, because Egbuka hasn't quite locked that down just yet. Of course, last year dealt with some injury, but Will Howard had some positive things to say about that group as well. Quote, "They're incredibly hardworking all across the room. We've got dudes like Carnell, Tate, and Brandon Ennis, and obviously Igbuka, all of those guys. So, not a ton of detail. Will Howard, of course, is new to Columbus. I saw some quotes earlier this morning about Ryan Day. Said he's got to learn the playbook. That, of course, there's plenty of time for that. But as we get closer to spring practice kicking off for Ohio State, that these guys are working in the weight room, conditioning program in full swing. As Howard said, they're doing throw-in sessions on their own off to the side, and have to expect that Will Howard's very, very excited to work with that receiving group. And then this time of year and in spring practice, and much like we did in the C2-a-days time of the year in the fall, we take these quotes where we can get them, try to parse that information and try to get some sort of idea, where the pecking order may lie, because, Campus Canton, of course, we're a fantasy company. And, if it looks like there's a strong indication that Carnell Tate maybe really will challenge Igbuka for that top receiving spot, that top target, noting that Brandon Ennis was somebody who is, discussed within this top 3, top 4 group of receivers, but then also just, want to know how that elite freshman prospect, Jeremiah Smith, what the new quarterback thinks of him as well. So certainly more to come, but out of Columbus and Ohio State, a program that we're going to have a really, really keep a close eye on as we talk Good Morning College Football for the next 8 months until the games are in full swing, 7-8 months. So another new quarterback, Notre Dame, Riley Leonard. Last week, there were some reports coming out of South Bend that though he has had ankle surgery, had a tightrope surgery in January, which of course, stems from an ankle injury he suffered when he was playing for Duke against Notre Dame and Howard Cross's new teammate. There apparently have been some jokes between the two that Howard Cross owes Riley Leonard dinner at the very least. But that was a major impact injury that cost Riley Leonard a good chunk of last season. He, of course, suffered that injury in late September. He did play twice more, but missed the final 5 games. Also had a toe injury that he was dealing with during that period, and just severely limited his availability. But then also, as things shifted, as Mike Elko moved on to Texas A&M, the head coach at Duke, now at Texas A&M, and Riley Leonard looking for a place to finish his college career, moves on to Notre Dame, where he is expected to take over that starting quarterback position, and it's off to a good start, because apparently he is almost 100% in off-season workouts in South Bend. Is not able. I think there's some sprinting, perhaps, according to reports, that he's not able to do at full speed quite yet. But when spring practice kicks off in March, Riley Leonard is expected to be full go, and that, of course, is good news for a Notre Dame team that, not the leader in returning production. They do, of course, have a good bit to replace in the receiving core. That's going to be a major story, how that group shakes out for Leonard, and also Audric Estime, running back, moving on. But ranking 86th currently in our returning production numbers. That's not low enough that it's a major danger area for a program like Notre Dame, which really has recruited well and is adding some key pieces through the transfer portal, like Leonard, who, honestly, because he missed half the season, basically, we're probably not accounting for his impact enough based on what we've seen from him in the past. Some of the, NFL draft observations, folks who pay very, very close attention to that, to college football guys like Riley Leonard, with an eye toward his pro career. I do believe he's a little bit of a there's not a consensus, but has a pro career ahead of him. And I know coming into last year, there was definitely some buzz and some excitement. And so seeing him back and healthy and able to produce at a higher level, we hope next year for Notre Dame, certainly a big deal. Finishing up some of the player notes and news, fairly big transfer commitment last night, Tuesday night. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, who spent last year at New Mexico, where he ran for 1,185 yards and 17 touchdowns with the Lobos, has committed to Arizona. A little bit of a surprise. There was some news last week that he had taken a visit to Washington. Former Arizona head coach Jedd Fisch, of course, there with the Huskies, but ends up back at Arizona at Fisch's old stomping ground. So as we look at how the running back situation shakes out at Arizona, there's definitely some opportunity, because Jonah Coleman, who led the Wildcats last year with 871 yards, tied for the team lead with 5 rushing touchdowns. He has moved on to Washington. DJ Williams and Michael Wiley, one of the standouts at the Senior Bowl, Wiley, have also moved on to their pro careers. They are out of eligibility. That leaves Rayshawn Luke as the player who would have been the leader in rushing yards with 153, is actually the only player returning from last year's team with a rushing touchdown. So Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt really has an opportunity, it seems like, to step in and maybe play a similar role, have a similar level workload for new head coach Brent Brennan. Krosky-Merritt is, didn't have a ton of opportunity as a receiver last year at New Mexico. 7 catches on 8 targets, 72 yards, 1 touchdown there. Rayshawn Luke was, put up more yards on fewer catches last year, had some big plays. So, the way that they used Michael Wiley last year, really towards the end of the season, it seemed like most of his opportunities, because of course he was limited by injury, but came as a receiver. A little bit of a different offense, and it will be interesting to see what similarities there are, what differences under Brent Brennan. But last year, Kyrie Robinson had over 1,100 yards, nearly 1,200 yards, 18 touchdowns. Quali Conley, somebody who's in the transfer portal now. Both of those players, of course, at San Jose State under Brent Brennan. He had 840 yards and 9 touchdowns. So they split that workload pretty well. Both guys had over 130 rushing attempts. Robinson had nearly 170, did miss one game last season due to injury. But as of right now, Krosky-Merritt certainly will be the most experienced, most productive running back in that Arizona room. But Rayshawn Luke is somebody who could step up and be, a quality number 2, perhaps even they'll end up sharing a workload similarly to Kyrie Robinson, Quali Conley. And, we don't know where Conley is headed quite yet as well. It's very, very possible that he could end up in Tucson in addition to Krosky-Merritt. So certainly something to keep an eye on how that all shakes out. But Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, that level of production, nearly 1,200 yards, 17 touchdowns in 12 games last season. He was one of the top players on the board as far as the running back transfers. So a couple of other minor notes in the last few days and some of my reading, and we'll have as much of this type of thing as we can find, because even though they might not be major impact players next season, still worth noting, and you never know. And former Virginia Tech Dwayne Lofton, who is a former starter for the Hokies, he is committed to Oklahoma State. So certainly we've seen Oklahoma State wide receivers produce in the past. Brennan Presley, Rashad Owens last year were at the top of the charts for the Cowboys. Deshaun Stribling, who is limited to just 4 games, he will be back as well. Taylor Stretton, who has had limited opportunities, but you can expect will have more moving forward. And Dwayne Lofton didn't put up very much last season, but has some experience in the past, and you certainly would think will move into that rotation a bit. Savell Smalls, a former 5-star recruit edge defender, played defensive end at Colorado after transferring from Washington last season. He is moving to the offensive side of the ball, going to be playing tight end for the Buffs, who did have some production at that position, somewhat unexpectedly, especially early last season when Michael Harrison emerged, a smaller tight end, but had 41 targets last year, 31 catches, 284 yards, 5 touchdowns. They do, of course, bring in Shimon Medier from Cincinnati, and would expect that he's pretty clearly, expected to be that top receiving tight end, but someone who, has the 5-star pedigree as Savell Smalls, even though he's been a little bit disappointing so far in his career from playing time and production standpoint. A talented player, and you have to expect that in an offense that's going to throw it as much as Colorado did. And yes, of course, Sean Lewis has moved on to San Diego State. Not sure they're going to be quite as wide open this year as it looked like at the beginning of last season, with Pat Shurmur calling plays full time in Boulder. But there's going to be some opportunity, moving pieces at that tight end position, where last year, Harrison was a former walk-on, I believe, or an unrated player or a low-rated player coming out of high school. So they've added some talent to that room, bringing in really an unknown in Savell Smalls, moving him over, but big target and certainly athletic enough, I think, to make an impact. We'll see how much of receiving impact he can make, but worth noting perhaps. At North Texas, Jace Reuter. This might have been a little bit of old news, but is former quarterback transfer at North Texas. Has played some in the past, spent, I believe, a good bit of last year out due to injury, but he's moving over to defense. So as we're looking to see who's going to be replacing Chandler Rogers, who of course is transferred to Cal, Chandler Morris is committed. There is some thought that perhaps Morris might actually end up at Texas State. Seems like maybe just as likely to me personally right now as North Texas, because of the recent hire of Chad Morris, his father, on the staff there at Texas State. Chandler Morris sounds like it was never really his plan to be on campus in Denton in the spring. Was going to be a summer enrollee, but not currently on the roster, not currently on campus, and nothing is official until it's final anymore in college football. And even then, things can change. So, Jace Reuter, a guy that has some experience, probably wasn't really going to factor in to this quarterback competition too much, but has moved over to linebacker. So just to note there that he officially is not expected to compete there in the job, or for the job there in North Texas. Of course, this is National Signing Day. We will have more on this in later episodes, but one major note, one big name that had not signed in the early signing period, Gaitlin Bair, committed to Oregon over the weekend, has officially signed this morning, Wednesday, prior to the show. Speedster from the state of Idaho, had previously been the highest rated commit at Boise State, but decommitted somewhat late in the process. Oregon swooped in got his commitment, his signature. For Bair, we will have to wait a little bit. He's not expected to enroll until 2026. Is going to be on a mission. Member of the LDS Church. He'll be not available to play college football for the next 2 seasons, but somebody who certainly is highly regarded in recruiting circles, has been very impressive as a high school recruit. And Oregon, continues to stockpile talent. They've recruited very well under Dan Lanning. They have been among the very best in identifying transfer players to come in and contribute right away. They rank pretty high in returning production, top 40 or so, as we talk today, which for a national championship contending type team is high, is up there. So I would expect that Ohio State, who we mentioned before, is going to be one of the top challengers to Georgia in our CFP Winning Edge team strength power rankings at the preseason to start. Oregon is going to be in the mix. They will, of course, have to replace Bo Nix, but bringing in Dylan Gabriel really helps offset a lot of that lost production from Nix, and they do rank among the top 15 in added offensive production. That's a number that you would have access to in our 2024 returning production database. They are 9th in added overall production. So Oregon is, already hard at work, has filled a lot of holes from players moving on to the NFL through the transfer portal, but of course have added some really talented players, high school recruits as well, and Gaitlin Bair is certainly at the top of that list, toward the top of that list, and somebody that will be excited to see on a college football field when we get that opportunity in a couple of years. All right. So there are plenty of stories in college football off the field that we'll spend probably a little less time on here than maybe you might find elsewhere, but worth noting because the game is changing, has been evolving for a long time, and there's some things that happen in the last week or so that could have a major impact moving forward. So there was a report, or there've been some news about the NLRB ruling that Dartmouth men's basketball players are employees. That will have a major impact in college football, or will be a news event that we're going to need to keep an eye on, see how that could change, how the sport, the NCAA and however that is evolving will adjust. For me personally, Dartmouth is the closest Division I school to where I am currently in Vermont. So something that I'll perhaps be able to keep an eye on just due to that location a little bit. But I am certainly no expert when it comes to labor law and things of that nature. So probably won't dig too deep into that, but knowing that there was a similar ruling with Northwestern football several years ago, there were some things behind the scenes that made that not have as big of an impact as it potentially seemed like at the time. But this is a little bit of a different situation, especially as Dartmouth and the Ivy League are all private schools. A little bit of a different scenario that we'll just have to see how it plays out. There, of course, is other litigation going on. The states, Tennessee and Virginia, against the NCAA. There was news about a streaming, package between ESPN, Fox, and I believe Warner Brothers that is going to be something to keep an eye on in future years as well. So we'll maybe dig into some of those at a later date as those start to flesh themselves out a bit. But for the most part, we're probably going to stay, players and coaches and on-field type stuff. On that note, there are still some coaching changes ongoing in college football. If you listen to the CFP Winning Edge podcast, last week. I was very, very much looking forward to something we've been doing for 4 or 5 years now. We have a draft of first-year head coaches. It's one of my favorite things to do in the off season. Scott Bogman, Xavier Trish, and I each draft a team of first-year head coaches, and we have a scoring system set up to based on wins and improvement, things like that. And it's just a lot of fun. It's something I really, really enjoy, and it helps, I think, really. It helps me wrap my head around a little bit how to expect these teams to really change. What head coaching hires really should pay off the most in terms of win-loss record, and of course, at CFB Winning Edge, we don't always concern ourselves with wins and losses. We do win total projections and things of that nature, but for my personal research and what I pay closest attention to, we have a number called team performance, where it's basically a grade of how a team has performed on the field using a wide range of advanced statistics, one of which is not wins and losses, because sometimes those can be a little bit misleading. But regardless, looking at things like schedule, looking at whether a guy has an offensive or defensive background, how that could potentially impact the roster that they are inheriting or now, rebuilding in 1 year. But I was very excited because we got the news that Sharon Moore had been promoted at Michigan. The coaching carousel at the head coaching level seemed like it was done. All 134 FBS programs had a head coach in place. Well, not long after we finished recording, and I think even before that show was published, news broke that Jeff Hafley, the head coach at Boston College, was taking a job in the NFL, going to be the defensive coordinator for the Green Bay Packers. So that disappointed me because it pushed our head coaching draft. But he's not potentially the only one that we're going to have to worry about. But first, there have been lots of reports that Bill O'Brien is reportedly the favorite. I know the Boston Globe had a report. ESPN's Pete Thamel also said that Bill O'Brien was expected to be the top candidate, but BC, according to Thamel, is not expected to make a formal decision until this weekend. They are apparently orchestrating multiple rounds of in-person interviews, which is somewhat rare at this day in college football. I know Jed Fish, there was a quote I saw a week or so ago about the interview process at Washington, and he said basically it was a 40-minute phone conversation, and next thing you know, you're the head coach. And on a certain level, that's understandable. I mean, those people who think a lot about college football and research it and pay very close attention, we think we know who the good coaches are and who aren't. So I'm sure athletic directors and those in charge are making similar observations, but also a 40-minute phone conversation where maybe it's the first time you've actually spoken to this person that you are going to hand over the keys to the basically the biggest asset you've got in a lot of ways from a university standpoint. That seems like I personally would want a little bit more than a 40-minute phone conversation. So Boston College taking that approach that they do want to apparently meet with candidates in person multiple times, understandable, because it's a big deal. And really knowing if you can work with somebody on a day-to-day basis, perhaps you get a little bit better of a feel for that in person, but that's not the way things work most of the time. But regardless, Bill O'Brien, who is currently the offensive coordinator at Ohio State, and this morning, multiple beat reporters there in Columbus who were speaking with Ohio State, among them Cameron Teague, Bill Rabonovitz, They said that Ryan Day reported that O'Brien is in Columbus this morning. "Quote: He is working today, and we'll see how it goes." So, Day knows that O'Brien is in the mix at BC. I personally have started to, outside of that head coaching draft, shy away a little bit from initially labeling somebody as a good head coaching hire or a bad head coaching hire. I of course will have immediate thoughts and kind of a reaction to it. Bill O'Brien specifically is somebody who has sort of been trending in a little bit of a negative direction in terms of how people perceive him as a play caller, and I think that there's maybe some evidence for that, but also this guy's got had a lot of success. First of all, has been a play caller at a high level in the NFL, has been a head coach, did a great job at Penn State in a very, very difficult situation, but has had some success there. He's somebody who's been hired multiple times by Bill Belichick, by Nick Saban, and then got the offensive coordinator job at Ohio State, which is one of the premier jobs in college football, especially as a non-head coach. That's one of the premier spots, and Bill O'Brien was going to be put in charge of as we discussed earlier, one of the most talented offensive rosters in the country, and expect that he was probably going to have a lot of success there. So maybe it will be short-lived. Maybe he'll be moving on to Chestnut Hill relatively quickly. We could know as soon as this weekend, but it's possible, as I alluded to, that another head coaching job, and a big one, might become available. UCLA's Chip Kelly has been connected to multiple NFL offensive coordinator jobs, reportedly interviewed multiple times with the Las Vegas Raiders, had been connected when the Washington Commanders head coaching vacancy was filled. And now there are some indications that Kelly reportedly interviewed with the Seattle Seahawks on Tuesday for their offensive coordinator position. So one source that I looked into, sort of the feeling on the ground there at UCLA, and there's been plenty of vocal there's been a lot of vocalization on thoughts on, do are we seeing more college head coaches specifically? Jeff Hafley as an example, Chip Kelly, if he were to move on, as an example, moving on to the NFL. Is that something that's new because of the changes in college football? The constant need to re-recruit your own roster, dealing with the transfer portal. It's not just recruiting is a 365-day event anymore. Now it's even the guys who are currently on your roster. You have to worry about keeping them happier than usual, keeping them from exploring other opportunities, but then also, once changes are made, once guys move on, having to be very, very proactive in finding replacements and going out and re-recruiting a whole bunch of players from other current rosters. So it's something that's ramped up the workload even more. And for somebody like Chip Kelly, who has a reputation as somebody that really just wants to coach football, and at the NFL level, you can do that a lot more. So it's maybe not a surprise. It's not something that really seems new, quite honestly. I mean, there have been plenty of really, really good coaches, whether they're quarterbacks coaches, offensive coordinators, head coaches, who that's what they want to do. They want to coach ball. They want to draw up plays. They want to call plays. They don't really want to recruit. And, understandably, as somebody who loves college football, has for a long time, this is what I do all day, every day. If I were a coach, and it's been a long time since I've I coached a little bit, about a decade ago, but just knowing all the things that go on behind the scenes, and it's much more involved at the collegiate level than it was, for me and our staff at the high school level. I understand, if you have an opportunity to go to the league and really just sort of concentrate on beating an opponent and finding new ways to attack opponents, on the field through film study and working on football itself, and not really having to work about on things like recruiting and fundraising, meetings with donors and other events that take up a lot of the calendar for coaches, at the collegiate level, dealing with things like grades and stuff like that, making sure players are eligible. I understand it, and I hate to see it, as somebody who loves college football and is very invested in it, specifically, professionally and personally. But it is somewhat understandable, and it's not necessarily new, and maybe we will see a fewer, a little bit more high profile situation. Chip Kelly specifically is somebody who, as the head coach at UCLA, one of the maybe top 25 jobs in the country. And if he were to move on in February, that would be a huge deal. It would be something that we haven't really seen. I can't think of any major examples off the top of my head of a sitting, power conference head coach moving on, certainly for a step down in title to the NFL at this late of a stage. I mean, if he were to make this move, it would be after National Signing Day, both signing periods. And that would be somewhat unprecedented. And that was a word that David Woods of Bruin Report Online used a lot in a recent post, the 247 site there, that covers UCLA, and David Woods has been a publisher of that site for a long time. But in a PC titled "UCLA's Embarrassing Offseason Continues," and this was February 3rd. He went through all the unprecedented moves that Chip Kelly has seen, or has been at the top of the program there at UCLA. And David Woods has never been shy about voicing sort of his displeasure with Chip Kelly, with UCLA in general, both on the side and then the Podcast of Champions, a long time, has been able to share his thoughts on UCLA there as well, and certainly some things that he didn't feel like were going well. But David Woods put it all together in a piece last week that, quoting one piece here from one part here, with Chip Kelly openly courting offensive coordinator positions at the NFL level, it feels like UCLA football is at its lowest point in modern history. Woods talked about how the recruiting numbers have gone way down. He mentioned at one point, quote, "Kelly's program is dead. The recruiting has gone belly up," which is something to see given that it was already the worst recruiting program in modern UCLA history. He continues, quote, "There is minimal NIL funding." That, of course, is something that we're talking about more and more, and a reason that is often brought up as to why a guy like Chip Kelly might be wanting to move on from a place like UCLA, having to deal with NIL. Continuing here, quoting Woods again, "Certainly nothing that allowed UCLA to compete in the Big Ten, and yet, thanks to large part to a failure of leadership and vision from Martin Jamon, who's the athletic director there, and Gene Block, Kelly remains the head coach when he doesn't even want to be." So that's something to keep an eye on. It seems, if this move is going to happen, it could happen very, very quickly, especially if he interviewed for the Seahawks play caller job last night. If that opportunity were extended, could come together relatively quickly, and then we'll have yet another power conference program with a job opening very, very late in the cycle. So something to keep an eye on, but certainly they're on the ground, at least among one of the more prominent media figures that covers UCLA very closely, has for a long time. Things don't necessarily seem to be going well, and UCLA seemed like might have been ready to move on from Chip Kelly last season, especially after the loss to Arizona State. Decided not to. Seemed like maybe things were moving in a positive direction. There was the big win over USC, but things don't necessarily seem to be going well right now. And Chip Kelly, sitting head coach and a pretty prominent one, actively searching out NFL offensive coordinator jobs is not necessarily a good look, and not something that's making folks there very happy, it seems. So there are plenty of other coaching moves still ongoing. Of course, when head coaching jobs are opening up at this late stage, there's still offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, and other position coaching jobs that are open, available, and news is happening. We'll dig into some of those in later episodes, I'm sure. But quickly, at Kentucky offensive coordinator Liam Cohen, one of those coaches who has moved back to the NFL. Buster Faulkner is a trendy name in that search. He has a history with new quarterback Brock Vandagriff from their time at Georgia when Faulkner was an analyst. Faulkner is currently the offensive coordinator at Georgia Tech, a team that ranks very, very highly in our offensive returning production numbers. So that would be a big loss for the Jackets. LSU promoted Joe Sloan to co-offensive coordinator after Mike Dambrook left for Notre Dame. Sloan will be the play caller. Co-offensive coordinator Cortez Hankin, quote, will have a major role as well. And the Tigers also added Slade Nagel, who was the play caller at Tulane the last couple of years. He's going to be the tight ends coach in Baton Rouge. The Michigan coaching staff is coming together under new head coach Sharon Moore. Kurt Campbell was promoted to offensive coordinator. Campbell was the OC at Old Dominion in 2021, previously served as an offensive analyst at Penn State as well. Some notable names have found new positions, including Steve Belichick, who is the new defensive coordinator at Washington. That was made official Tuesday evening. And Tommy Rees, who's somebody who is, believed to be a candidate at a lot of places for offensive coordinators, most recently at Alabama. He was hired by the Cleveland Browns, so someone moving to the NFL again as well. Has a history in the NFL also, but going to be the tight ends coach and pass game specialist in Cleveland, unless he perhaps is lured back to college football with some of the offensive coordinator jobs that are still open. We will, in future episodes, dig a little bit more into some of the content around Campus to Canton. We will hope to have interviews with members of the C2C team, other folks in the industry as well. But a lot of the things that we'll be talking about in future episodes, of course, returning production. I mean, that's a big ongoing project. Those numbers change quite a bit. Since we published some teams that we were too low on initially, Iowa, Virginia, Northwestern, Oklahoma State have risen based on, some updates, new information. We're getting official 2024 spring rosters are starting to trickle out a lot of places. That's very helpful. Getting some other, points from our members on maybe some players we had mislabeled. Again, there are 20,000 of them, so certainly there are some mistakes, and we want to make those as accurate as possible. But some things that I'd like to talk a little bit more about. There's a pre-spring stock up piece by Nate Marquise on the site that's got a lot of insight and observation on some players that are going to be going higher in drafts sooner than later, especially as those get started, mocks and very, very early CFF drafts. We did have the way too early CFF mock put together by Jared Palmgren recently. I was fortunate enough to be asked to take part in that. So do check that out if you haven't already. Somebody that I'm definitely taking some notes on. Volume Pigs wrote for us recently an assessment of Fran Brown's Syracuse headed into year one of his head coaching job. Syracuse is a team that's really got me interested. Somebody I want to dig into a little bit because it does really seem like there's the potential for Brown as a first-time head coach to really elevate the talent level there in Central New York. So something to keep an eye on. And Kyle McCord. There's a reason why Will Howard is at Ohio State now. Kyle McCord moved on and is going to be at Syracuse. So he's somebody that I'm definitely wanting to look into, and a team that I think will want to look into. And on that note, generally we'll try to reserve at least 15-minute segment for this, but in our final 5 or so minutes today, we're going to be highlighting a team of the day, team of each episode. If we were to do a daily show 5 times a week from starting today, we would be able to talk about each of the 134 FBS teams and finish in mid to late August. So, there is absolutely something that we could talk about every weekday moving forward. And certainly I could spend more than 5 minutes on every team, more than 15 minutes, probably could do a full hour just really digging into our returning production database, our team profiles at CFB Winning Edge, all the great content and information that's at your fingertips at campustocanton.com. But the first one I wanted to highlight's a team that we know somewhat relatively little about because they're brand new on the FBS map. That's Kennesaw State. They are our 134th team. They are featured in our returning production database. There is a little bit of, not 100% sure how much of what we've got there, we've done the best we can and think we've got it close to right. But if you are to compare our returning production numbers to, say, Bill Connolly of ESPN, there's a pretty big gap in where we rank Kennesaw State right now and where they have them. Top 10 in the ESPN numbers, they're in the 90s in our numbers. I think we're closer to right, but it's tough sometimes. We saw last year at Sam Houston, specifically their move up to FBS. They were able to preserve an extra year of eligibility for a lot of their key players. It didn't seem to me that Kennesaw State did exactly that, but they probably did in some cases. So that's something we're definitely going to double, triple, quadruple check that Kennesaw State roster, especially as we get a 2024 updated roster hopefully soon. But regardless, as it stands right now, Kennesaw State, moving up. They were 3-6 last year, played an FCS independent schedule. Head coach Brian Bohannon has been at Kennesaw State, head coach of the Owls for all 10 seasons in their history. When they began play in 2015, they posted a winning record immediately, and each of the first 7 seasons in program history. They won the Big South Conference in 2017, 2018, and 2021, appeared in the FCS playoffs 4 times in 17, 18, 19, and 2021. But once they joined the ASUN conference in 2022, that record started to turn in the wrong direction a little bit. They finished 5-6 that season, 1-4 in conference play. Last year, as I mentioned, they played a 9-game independent schedule that included 2 Division II opponents and 1 not affiliated with the NCAA. So all 3 of their wins actually came against non-D1 opposition. That said, it wasn't as bad as maybe it sounds. They lost 5 games by 1 possession, no games by more than 10. They had close calls against quality opponents like Chattanooga, which went 8-5 last season. Furman was a 10-win team, made it deep into the NCAA FCS playoffs. Came up short against FCS runner-up Montana in overtime. Those are tough opponents. They also played well against Sam Houston. They were up 14-0 in the first quarter, 21-7 at halftime, and 21-14 late. But they had a big play offense that was held in check by the Bearcats, who were able to come back and win 24-21. And mentioned that offense. We don't know quite yet officially who the play caller is going to be for Kennesaw in their first year, but they've been a run heavy pistol option offense most recently. Bohannon has a triple option background. The defense was definitely the strength, but they showed some big play potential. I did go back and watch that Sam Houston game. Also watched a game against Tennessee State, and the unit as a whole struggled on the offensive side of the ball specifically, but there were some positive signs. Some players maybe to know. One in particular, I think, is running back Michael Benefield, probably going to be the most impactful player. Maybe a late round flyer from a CFF standpoint. He'll need a heavier workload to really be somebody you can rely on, but maybe in a best ball situation, somebody worth a late round pick, perhaps. Averaged over 6 yards per carry, was the leading rusher, top guy as far as touchdowns go. Perhaps a little bit more of a athletic playmaker is Gabriel Binyard, who's listed as a running back, but was the top receiver. And somebody that would also like to see a bit of a heavier workload, see what he can do. Right now, the quarterback seems to be Davis Bryson, who will be stepping into that starting role. Kennesaw State hasn't added a ton from the transfer portal, but seems like a program that maybe could. So this all could change. But as of right now, those are the three names that stick out to me. Benefield probably being the only one right now I'd be willing to draft late in a CFF, best ball or league. But keep an eye on guys like Binyard and Bryson, especially if he's going to be the starter, because the quarterback did run quite a bit last year for Kennesaw State, and he seems to be the guy to be at that position. So that's going to wrap it up for us today. We are just over the 1 hour mark, but for our first episode of Good Morning College Football. Really appreciate you joining us today. We will have more news and insight, coaching changes, players, moving on, transfer portal, National Signing Day, all more to come later this week and in the weeks and months ahead. So got the first episode out of the way. We'll, of course, have a new team of the day next time. But hope everyone enjoys. Give us a like. Subscribe to the Campus to Canton YouTube channel, and do consider becoming a member. As low as $2.99 per month, $29.99 for an annual membership. But then also, we've got packages that go up from there for more and more premium content, including our C2C Winning Edge tier, where you can get access to that returning production database, see who's coming back, who's not, and the numbers associated with that. So thank you for tuning in today. Please join us again next time. I'm Nicholas Ian Allen for Good Morning College Football.